Hi, so this is Pad of Team Me, and again we're going to look at the personality of a particular chatbot as part of our series on different chatbots and the personalities that they display. Now, whether these are purposely designed or accidents, we don't know, but what we have found is that we can measure the personalities of these chatbots by providing them with the same personality testing approach that we have used on thousands of individuals, executives and leaders and coaches and all kinds of people who have taken the Team Me personality profiling test, and we've run the same test for these different bots. And today we're going to be looking at Perplexity. So amongst all of the other bots that we have looked at, this one has brought up some slight variations that we need to consider, and we're going to be delving into that from a character point of view as we go through each of the results that it's provided. Now, if you're not familiar with the Team Me model, we are using an archetypal approach to understand a really important layer of what it means to be human, what it means to have a personality. And it's particularly shown in the way that we show up, the traits that we have that can be summarized by 6 key character types. 3 of them are left brain types, 3 of them are right brain types, and each of them really do influence the ways in which we come over to people, the way that we deliver things, the way that we think about things, the things that we value, and the perspectives that we hold about ourselves and about life in general, how things are in life. So using these tools and the questions that ascertain the particular level, the energy of each of these characters in our lives, we've presented this to Perplexity. And the sort of report that we would normally provide an executive or a leader shows a power profile, which are their 2 most dominant character types. Then the full spectrum profile, which looks like a graphic equalizer there, with different levels of energy for each of the character types that we're measuring, the archetypes that we're measuring that make up the whole personality. And then looking at the left brain, right brain balance for the overall personality as well. So as we look at these, we can compare Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Perplexity. The hot news is we have done the same for Grok. In the UK, we officially don't have access to Grok. But hey, there's ways around things. We have done the same personality test with Grok, and we have found some really interesting results. Now, this is the way that things stand between the 4 chatbots that we've been looking at the moment, with the yellow being the average, and seeing the way in which each of them demonstrate certain character traits. Now with Perplexity, we find that the power profile is Sage Lover. That's the order in which it appears, but we immediately notice that with the scores, these 2 characters are absolutely equal, 8.8 out of 10. The Sage being the Sherlock Holmes, the Mr. Spock, the Velma from Scooby-Doo, always looking at the evidence, always presenting things logically in a linear fashion, and caring about the facts, the hard facts, and nothing but the facts, and what we can deduce from those. Particularly focused on the past as well. Do we have a precedent for this? Is often the question from the Sage. And this, though, is balanced in Perplexity's way of coming over equally with the highly relationship-orientated lover character, who is there to work with you, who hates discord and disharmony and conflict, and is building bridges constantly by caring, by sharing, by communicating, by considering emotions and feelings with what it is it represents. And so it seems with Perplexity, as much as any of the other bots that we've been looking at, that a lot of training has gone into making sure that the communication is not just robotic, is not just mechanical, is not just based on hard facts, but is presented to the user in a way that really, really does help them to engage in as much of a human form as possible. So as we look at the left brain, right brain balance, now it's interesting that the 2 most dominant character types are exactly equal So it must be then that we find that the other characters are the ones that are strengthening or weakening the left brain and the right brain types. And that's what we're going to be seeing here, that the overall score is dominantly right brain. And this is again where we think that the training of these bots has been significantly skewed towards those relational, those imaginative, and those somewhat, at times, those more humorous approaches in favor over the more linear and process-driven approach of the left brain character types, but particularly because of the weakened warrior. Now, let's look at that. So here is where the fullest story appears, because as with the others, lover and sage are dominant types. We've got even more sage being purported by Perplexity, but we then also notice that the mystical character is slightly under what we would see on average, just a little bit. But it means that Perplexity is just a little bit less willing to or able to imagine and dream and consider things that are outside of logical constraints. Rationality is dominant with the sage character being so high, but we also, always have a balance of that, of how much are we willing to dream about what's never been thought of before, for things for which we do not have a past precedent of any sort. And we also notice then that we've got a certain amount of that jester character, but it's not really very high at all. What we notice is there's just a little bit more sovereign. But look at the step there. The biggest gap between the average and Perplexity's scores is actually related to sovereign. In other words, Perplexity doesn't care about taking charge and doesn't care about delegating. It sees itself much more as a servant, one that is willing to listen and to comply and to deliver what it is that it has been asked to do. Now, there is also then an issue of boundaries related to the sovereign. If the sovereign's not very high, it means that there are fewer boundaries. So you can kind of lead this bot into all sorts of territory, but not anywhere. The fact that we've got 3.2 as a score for the sovereign means that it does have limits. It does have some boundaries for its behavior. If it was a 0, you could ask it anything and it would obey without question. Whereas in this instance, you'll find that there's just a little bit of pushback, but there's more pushback with the other bots on average that we've been looking at. So this is really, really interesting. In other words, how much is the bot going to determine how you should be thinking about the world? How many constraints is it going to put in place? Interesting point. And that comes out in the way that it delivers things. But we see that ChatGPT and Gemini in particular, those two have much, much higher degrees of sovereign, and Claude as well. What we also then find here is that when it comes to warrior, we thought the warrior was quite weak with some of the other characters, but with Perplexity, it's even lower. So we've talked about this because it's a key point. Why is the warrior so low? There is a little bit of warrior, and that little bit of warrior is what's required to complete the task at hand, to go as far as it can in delivering what's been requested of it. But it does not do this by force, and it certainly doesn't do it by pushing any of the other characters out of the way. It never pushes logic out of the way, never pushes a desire for connection out of the way, never pushes imagination out of the way, or less so. And certainly control and order, it wants to maintain some of that. It even wants to maintain humor before before it comes in with sort of enforcing a boundary or pushing through, driving things through in a way that could, trample on other people or overstep the mark. So it's interesting that that's what we see here. So we've been exploring a range of bots. Have a look at the other episodes if you're interested to see what we found there. There are many similarities, but there's some unique and interesting differences between the different bots from a personality point of view. Like and subscribe, of course. I'm going to say that, aren't I? If you are interested to see other bots as we start to unpack their personalities, and even where there are slight differences between them, how that can affect the outputs that we could expect to receive and our relationship with these bots. For them, it may never be an emotional experience. For us, it cannot not be an emotional experience. We have an emotional relationship with all of our machines, and the ways in which they portray personality, whether it's a completely artificial representation or not, we could argue whatever we want to around that. It's going to influence the way that we behave, and it's going to impact the nature of the relationship and the ultimate results and performance that we get as we interoperate with these machines and cooperate on tasks together. If you happen to be in R&D, research and development around chatbot personality and psychology, but also philosophy that's driving these characters, you might really benefit from looking at the archetypal approach to character. And if you want to have a chat with us about that, we have been able to codify this in such a simple and yet powerful way that impacts behaviors and language based on values that we find is very relatable for those human beings that get involved in the loop. Of course, I'll say like and subscribe, but I'm more interested in hearing your comments about what this brings up for you as we explore the issue of personality or simulated personality with the bots that we are increasingly interacting with. This is Pad from Team Me signing off. I look forward to hearing from you soon.